Welcome back, my friend. This is Mr. Alan in the world of toys. And today I have a very special guest, my friends. An awesome artist. I give you the one and the only William Stout. Welcome, William. Welcome, Bill. How you doing?
Hey, ciao, come stai?
Parli pure italiano. Awesome.
So happy to be here. I miss Italy so much.
Which part of Italy do you visit in the past?
I lived in Rome for a little while, but then I took my wife and we visited Venice, Bologna. Oh gosh, the city where they have the horse races.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, all over Tuscany.
Tuscany, awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Great food, great people, great architecture, great art. And we went to Florence, of course. I had to see the Michelangelos. And
yes, Florence is cool.
Yeah.
And this channel is a channel of
in Lucca. I went to Lucca.
Lucca. Okay. This channel is a channel of a toy collector, action figure, some stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I want to start this conversation to talk about a movie, one of the many movies that you work in the past, any movie that I like so much. If you see right now, behind me, there is an artwork, a poster of Masters of the Universe, Snake Mountain. And I want to talk with you, take a closer look with you. I want to start with this movie, The Master of the Universe. I want to talk to you about the making of, some behind-the-scenes story if you have, and also to talk about some character, because I have also, to show you right here, some figure from this movie.
Cool. Is that the Super 7 Skeletor?
Yes, exactly. I made also an interview with Brian Flynn on Super 7. He's my friend also. Sometimes I make some interview with Brian Flynn, yes. But speaking of the movie, how start this movie? What is the beginning process to involve you in this movie?
Well, first I was contacted and hired to be the storyboard artist for the movie. I had been a production designer on 2 films prior to Masters of the Universe. They were an unmade American Godzilla movie, and then after that was The Return of the Living Dead. But this one, I was just hired to do storyboards. But the director, Gary Goddard, and I, we really hit it off. We had shared all of the same passions. If he told me to Kirby up something a little bit, I knew exactly what he was talking about, who was a dear friend of both of ours. And so I started out doing storyboards, but every once in a while I would do a character design or a costume design, or I would design a set. And Gary just loved what I was doing, but he was not so in love with what the production designer was doing. He was an Englishman named Jeffrey Kirkland. And he and Jeffrey Kirkland kept butting heads on the design for the film. And finally, Jeffrey decided to leave the motion picture, and he recommended that I take over his job as production designer. So I immediately began designing everything for the film. Oh, did you freeze up? You froze up on my side. Can you still hear me?
And then I because from a few times you was frozen, and maybe I'm missing something, but you talk when you take over the design situation of the movie.
Yes. So Jeffrey Kirkland, the production designer, he decided to leave the film. He recommended that I take over for him. And so I became the production designer on the film. Now, the film business is a very small world. And I was told I was the new production designer at 10 a.m. in the morning. And by noon, I was getting congratulatory phone calls from all over the city, from the industry, people in the industry congratulating me. They knew before my own family knew that I was the production designer. And it's remarkable. But I worked with a great team. Julie Weiss did some beautiful costume designs, and Ed Eith did a lot of the more techie designs. Joe Griffith designed the interior of Gwildor's hut, and I oversaw the design of the entire film. Typically, when I'm a production designer, I have about 1,200 people working for me. So a lot of my job is just managing people and also finding out how to get the best out of each person. Every person's different. Some people need me to be their big daddy. Some people need me to yell at them. Some people need to just be hugged and cry. Everybody's different.
I want to take a closer look of some characters we created for this movie. And I will start for this version of Skeletor. This is the Dark Despot Skeletor version. What is the idea to create this look for this character?
Well, one of the things I didn't want to do, I didn't want to literally translate the original toys to the screen because I thought that was too limiting, especially with He-Man. I merely wanted to get rid of that haircut that made him look like he was a member of ABBA. But fortunately, I had a friend working nearby who I was able to hire to help me out on some of the film, and his name is Jean Giraud. He's also known as Mobius. And he came up with a great haircut for He-Man. And he also came up with a fantastic idea for the clothes that He-Man was wearing. He felt that since they were on a sort of a world civil war in Eternia, that he would pick up scraps of metal and strap them to his body and use that as armor. Mattel wasn't crazy about that idea, but I was able to get some of that into the film.
Okay, yes, because the character was very different, especially this is the He-Man version of the movie.
Yes.
You create something new in this character, maybe to be also more realistic, I believe, than the Mattel version or Filmation cartoon version. Because it looks like...
Yeah, whenever I do fantasy films or science fiction films, one of my goals is to make it so realistic that I am convinced that it is real. Because I figure if I can't convince myself, then I cannot convince the public.
Yes, cool. I agree for this. I like this philosophy. I have also this other version of Skeletor that you created for the movie there.
Oh yeah, when he transforms himself into the sort of a gold god.
Yes. What is the idea, for example, to this helmet this helmet, the concept of this helmet with looks like a red eye right here, the big horns? What is the inspiration for this version of Skeletor?
Well, the red eye is the mystical third eye that we supposedly have.
Okay.
Things and see things that normal people cannot see.
Okay, and this is the idea for the helmet of Skeletor, however.
Yes.
The mystical eyes.
Yes, since he is acquiring all the power in the universe to become this godlike character, I felt he had to become much more elaborate in the way he looked.
Yes, it becomes so hyper, looks like a god, it looks like in the moment of the story.
Unfortunately, we had a great actor playing Skeletor, Frank Langella.
Yes.
He's such an amazing actor, and I was very surprised to find out that his favorite role of all the films that he's done has been Skeletor. Yes,
and maybe it's the bigger thing that you remember of the movie, especially the way Langella portrayed Skeletor character, because was interesting also with because he works also in the psychology of the character also, and maybe it's the big deal of the movie. But you created also some new character for the movie, like this one, Karg.
Yeah,
for
Karg.
example. What is the inspiration for this character that where wasn't before in the Master of the Universe mythology? Is something new, this character, for example?
I wanted each of the characters to be instantly recognizable. So I wanted a variety of shapes and sizes and looks. And so Karg, I figured he would be the little guy, and
Yes.
he would. I based his face on the face of bats. So he has sort of a bat-like face. And even though he was small, he was very ferocious looking.
Yes. And it becomes something new in this movie, because it's a character that you created for this movie that never was before.
Right.
It's a
Also
own
did
character.
that, yes, also did that with Blade, too.
Yes, yeah, I have the Blade figure also right here.
And there was an interesting coincidence. We had cast Anthony, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting his last name, as the to play Blade, and he was also in a film that I wrote. I wrote a movie for Roger Corman called The Warrior and the Sorceress, and Anthony DeLongis was in the film, and he staged all the sword fights. He's a sword fight expert, and he also staged all the sword fights for Masters of the Universe as well.
Cool. Therefore, in the scene, in the fight between Skeletor and Man with the sword,
Yes.
was Anthony the Skeletor.
Yeah, whenever there was a sword fight, Anthony was involved in designing the fight.
Cool. And speaking other character of this movie, I have also, we remember also another character you created is Sorad, this other
Yes.
character.
This was everybody's favorite villain, and they were so disappointed when he got killed so early in the movie. They wished that he had stayed around because he was a fascinating character.
Yes, he dies so early in the movie, too early maybe.
Yeah.
And what is the idea behind this character? Because he looks like a reptile from the space. Looks like the idea behind for this character.
Yes, yeah, he's very reptilian, and I designed everything about him. I even designed the contact lenses for the actor to wear so that he would look reptilian in his eyes as well.
Awesome. And also, last but not least, is the other guy's Gwildor character.
Oh yeah, little Gwildor. The actor who played Gwildor is a wonderful actor. His name is Billy Barty. And in Los Angeles, he was the host of a children's television show. But his career goes way back to The Wizard of Oz. He was one of the little baby munchkins hatching in the nest in The Wizard of Oz. And every day I would be on set because I'm a very hands-on production designer. I like to see what's going on and make sure everything is functioning well. And I would be standing on the set, and I'd feel a tug on the back of my coat, and I'd look down, and it would be Billy, and he'd have a new joke for me every single day.
Was a nice guy, he was.
Yeah, super nice guy.
And speaking of the set, for example, for the Castle of Grayskull throne room, what is the behind the scene to making of this big set?
And it was based upon a Frank Lloyd Wright hotel that he designed for Tokyo, Japan. But the main set, which I think you're talking about, which has the throne, and it's the throne room, that was an idea and design that I came up with Mobius. We decided that since this is the seat of power to all the universe, power is neither good nor bad. It is what you make of it. So we had elements of the goodness of power, which are the space gods that rise above the platform, and then the gargoyles and the eerie creatures that are below, that represent the bad things that you can do with power.
Cool, very cool. And speaking of the idea, because in the movie we remember also some black guard for Skeletor, a troop of guard with a black.
Yeah, the stormtroopers. That was my only big disappointment in the film. Is I thought they looked too much like Star Wars stormtroopers, but just painted black. And yes. I tried to fight against that. And today, Gary Goddard, the director, says he made a mistake. He should have let me do something completely original. But it's too late.
Yes, I agree with you for that, because it's easy to make a comparison with Star Wars Trooper. Yes, it's Also, the music was a little bit Star Wars, the main theme, the main title music for Master of the Universe.
Yeah, it was sort of a cross between the soundtrack, the score to Star Wars and the score to Superman. In fact,
Yes.
when Gary first played me the score, I said, "You're joking, right?" I thought he was playing a joke on me. I said, "That's the Superman score, right?" He goes, "No, no, no."
Yes, we are on the same page. Before to go to another things of your career, there is some comments about this movie from the fan. I want to share with you with this movie, with
Okay.
this with you these comments. This guy's Demi Story says Sorod was totally underused and was one of the coolest character. I'm an 80s kid and proud. Just a shame we never got a sequel. Film has a lot of memory for me. Was planned a sequel for this movie?
Yes. Right after the film came out, it was interesting. When the movie came out, I was following the box office to see how it was doing, and it did pretty well the first weekend. Typically, when a film opens, its best weekend is the very first weekend, and then it starts to go down. Attendance starts to go down and down and down. But the second weekend, attendance went up, which is really unusual. And then the third weekend, it went up again, even higher. And the fourth weekend, it went up again, even higher. And I thought, my God, we've got this incredible word of mouth hit on our hands. And then suddenly it was pulled from the theaters. But that's because I didn't know it, but Conan had gone bankrupt. And so they couldn't afford to keep it in the theaters anymore or to advertise it anymore. Very frustrating.
Very sad because was on a sequel. Because I remember after the ending title of the movie, Skeletor appears and says, "I'll be back."
Yes.
And was like from the beginning of a possible sequel. No, you imagine that, but never done because of what happened with the canon. It's sad because there is many people around the world who love this movie, especially because it's another way to the concept of Master of the Universe. It's another things. And I like this because you created something new in something that was iconic before. And I like this. This thing is also the character you created because they're so original and become something new. But what happened between you and Mattel? Because we know that Mattel released just 3 figures of the characters.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting situation in that I was hired to design the motion picture, and I had other artists and designers working on the film as well. And one day, the Mattel people came to the studio, and they were looking at all the characters that we had designed on the walls, and they said, "Oh my God, that's a great character. That's going to be a fantastic toy. Oh, look at that one. That's going to be a great toy too." And I said, "Gentlemen, stop. You have hired me to design the motion picture, but you did not hire me to create your next year's toy line. We need to renegotiate." And they freaked out. They totally freaked out. And they threatened to shut down the film 8 times because we kept designing the motion picture, but we refused to sign a contract those as their next toy line. But finally, they caved in, and they gave us participation points in the toys. They gave to the 5 designers. So that was the big fight I had with Mattel.
But later, Super 7 realized the other character that you made.
Yes. So Super 7, who does a fantastic job with the Masters of the Universe characters, they decided they wanted to do a series. They called it the William Stout series, based upon the designs I did for the film. And they got the license from Mattel to do that. And then they started selling the toys, and the sales figures, the royalties that Mattel was getting astonished them. They thought, "Oh my God, this money is flowing in like crazy. Holy cow." Mattel had no idea how popular that series was. So they immediately took away the rights to do more toys from Super 7.
Yes, I know. I talked for that with Brian Flynn of Super 7. It was sad because also these figures are very cool. For example,
they need to do the rest of it.
and more, a big dream for collector like
Yeah.
me also is a Beastman for your movie, Evelyn for your movie, Dylan, because you created another version of Beastman in the movie, very cool,
Yes.
and also the Evelyn version was very cool. Also, Man at Arms and Tila, you created something new also for these other characters.
Yeah.
And the thing is that now Super 7 has no longer the license to create these toys. It's so sad for collector, in my opinion, because was very cool, in my opinion, very detailed, and also the first time ever to have a movie accurate, a bit accurate likeness also, likeness for the actor with the figure. Therefore, to me, it's so sad that they lost the license to continue this line because it was very cool, in my opinion.
Now, you probably know better than I do, but I heard that Mattel decided to give the license back or sell the license back to Super 7 so that they could do more. Is that true or not?
Not yet, because now Mattel work in another Master of the Universe stuff. They recreated an updated version for the old toys of the 80s called Master of the Universe Origins. And now they have some series of Netflix and will be a Mastersverse line. Therefore, I don't know. Not now. Now they can make more Master of the Universe toys, Super 7. But maybe in the future, never say never. But now there is some. There's not official possibility to Super 7 to make more Master of the Universe because Mattel has other plan for other situation. But to me, is I don't know, and because they want, Mattel is a big toy company like Hasbro, for example. When they have a license, decide to make something, stop everything related, and this is the big problem, in my opinion. Also because the character for your movie, for your characters, was a totally different version of Master of the Universe.
Right.
And not related what they produce right now, because they produce something that totally different situation. Also, they stop another line that I like from Super 7 based for the Filmation cartoon accurate figure was very cool also. And I don't like this situation, but it's typical of a big guy when a big guy arrives in a small village and take over everything.
Yeah, the other big fight I had with Mattel is there was a beautiful book that was done called The Art of Masters of the Universe. And I did an interview for that. And I said, I still have all the original art from the motion picture. If you like, you guys can use that in the book. And then Mattel said, well, if we use your art in the book, then we own the copyright. I said, well, I'm not going to give you my copyrights for free. Are you insane? And so that's why in that book, there's an interview with me, but there's none of my art.
Maybe if you want in another interview, if you can find this artwork to show during the stream, it should be cool to see the artwork from the character of Master of the Universe.
There is a new book coming out from Germany on Masters of the Universe, on the movie.
Oh, okay. There is
between 80 and 100 pictures for that book. That book has been printed, and I think they're waiting for the shipment to arrive. But that's something to look out for.
Oh, cool!
Even
cool.
Though the book's in German, the pictures are all in English or Italian.
Perfect. And back to the movie once again. Speaking of Beastman, why Beastman doesn't talk during the movie? The Beastman character.
Oh, because he's a beast. That's something. I didn't write the screenplay, so I don't know why he doesn't talk. But one of the things we did with Beastman, I don't know if you can see it in the film or not, but on his pants there are all these handprints, and the reason behind that was we figured that Beastman was going to join Skeletor as a representative of the Beast people. And so before he left, all of the Beast people put their hands in paint and put their hands on his pants to give him the power of their people. It was a sort of representation, a visual allegory of the power of them giving the power to Beastman to fight with Skeletor.
And speaking of the makeup to create this creature, this transformation for the actor, was what is the process? Was a long process to create the normal actor to have the final makeup before to shoot in the movie.
Well, it wasn't as long as, say, Jack Pierce's makeups for Boris Karloff in Frankenstein or The Mummy, which took many hours, like 6 to 8 hours each day to apply the makeup. We had Michael Westmore doing the makeup, and so he would instead of doing complete, very painful, slow makeups, he created masks for a lot of the characters, which made things go much faster. It meant the actor did not have to sit in the makeup chair for many hours.
Okay. And was planned also for the movie created some scene in the Snake Mountain?
Yes, originally there was a lot more happening on Eternia. I did all kinds of designs for Eternia that never got used. The main reason being a budget. That's why most of the film is set on present day United States, because it was just cheaper to do that than to create a whole world with Eternia.
And the first time that you saw the final cut, the end of the final product of the movie, the first time, what is your first reaction?
My first reaction was, oh my God, we got a beginning, middle, and end. This is fantastic. I wasn't sure we were going to get that, because Conan was pulling the plug on the film at the very end.
There is another question for another fan, Anthony left. In He-Man, Lord Skeletor was disfigured human. Was that the same idea for the movie version?
I never knew about that. And so what I was designing when I was designing Skeletor, I wanted to design something that would look like a skull, of course, because he's Skeletor, but also something that would allow the actor, Frank Langella, to express himself as well. So it's, instead of his face actually being bone, it's more like a skin that looks like bone. Yes. So I thought that would be an interesting way to solve the problem of creating a Skeletor.
Okay, and speaking of these other things of the movie, the cosmic key.
Oh, now the cosmic key, I've got a funny story about that. Is we were getting all kinds of notes from Mattel about what they wanted to see, and they kept referring to something called Cosmickey. And so I'm thinking, Cosmickey. So I drew a little character with Mickey Mouse ears and called him Cosmickey. What I didn't realize is they were, when they wrote Cosmickey, what they meant was cosmic key, but they made it all one word, so it looked like Cosmickey.
It was cool as idea because.
Oh, the Cosmic Key was designed, by the way, by Ed Eith. I thought he did a fantastic job.
And I like also the idea because it looks like the power of the music. Because the Cosmic Key, when you play music, you can, for example, there is a power for the music because if you play a major, every note in the piano, for example, has something to us to discover. And the reason why the music starts, because music, in my opinion, is like a real magic music.
Yes, it's non-verbal communication.
Exactly. And also that give us special feelings, because if you play these notes, you have some feelings. You play this other one or this other one, other feelings. And there is a reason why, because in the past I composed some music for little movie in Italy. Therefore, I like also this part of the movie because with the music you created the scene and also the identity of a movie. And like we told before, the problem to the soundtrack of Master of the Universe is too much like Star Wars or Superman music. Yeah. And with a different music should be better to me, because with a property identity for the movie. And maybe I think it was a missing possibility to give some more for the movie the music, I believe, because of that we told before.
Yeah, I agree. I think each character should have his own theme. I think that's very important, so that when you hear the music, you're immediately reminded of who it is about. One of my favorite composers is Bernard Herrmann, who did a lot of the Ray Harryhausen movies, Seven Voyages, Sinbad, Mysterious Island. Fantastic film composer. And then my very favorite film of all time is King Kong, and it was the very first film to have a score where there were different melodies for different characters. It was created by Max Steiner, and boy, he just was way ahead of his time.
Yes. And now we go to other things that you made in your career, because you made another movie, two movies. They're a little bit related, speaking of the atmosphere a little bit. I'm talking about Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer. What is the beginning of this work? How start this work with Conan the Barbarian also?
Sure. So I'm a big Conan fan. I had read all the Robert E. Howard books, and I loved Conan. And a friend of mine, Bob Greenberg, was working as a production assistant on Conan the Barbarian, the movie. And he said, Bill, you've got to come over by the offices and see what Ron Cobb is doing. I go, Ron Cobb? He's a political cartoonist. He's designing Conan the Barbarian? I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. But at that time, I was doing movie posters. And I was so busy doing movie posters, there was no way I could just take some time off and go see what was going on with Conan. Finally, I got a break in my schedule, but instead of going over to the Conan offices, I went to something called the ABA. It's the American Booksellers Association. It was an event that used to happen every year, in which it was in LA or New York, sometimes Chicago, sometimes Las Vegas, but usually LA or New York. And that year was in Los Angeles. And it's every publisher and every editor in the entire United States all in one room. And so it's a great place for an illustrator like me to bring my portfolio and go booth to booth to booth and acquire work for the rest of the year. So that was my plan. I brought my portfolio with me, and I went to the ABA. And who should I run into? The first person I run into, Ron Cobb. And Ron said, look, Bill, you are the person I want to work with the most on Conan the Barbarian, but I have an agreement with John Milius, the writer-director. He has veto power over anybody I want to bring into the art department, and I have veto power over anybody he wants to bring into the art department. So would you mind leaving your portfolio for John to look at? And I thought, well, that might be fun. Learn how movies are made, could be interesting. And so the next day I went to the offices, and John Milius happened to be there. And I handed him my book, and he looked through it. And there was a story I had done for heavy metal that he really liked. It was a Harlan Ellison story called Shattered Like a Glass Goblin. It was an anti-drug story. And he flipped through the rest of it, handed me my book back, and then started to walk out of the room. Well, John is this sort of bigger-than-life character. And as he got to the doorway, he turned his head and said, hire him. And so I went in to see Buzz Feichens, our line producer, and Buzz told me what I would be making on Conan, and I nearly fell off the chair laughing because it was about 10% of what I was making in advertising. But I thought, well, it'll be interesting to see how movies are made, and plus they said they're only going to hire me for 2 weeks. I hired on a movie, you're always hired for 2 weeks. They want to find out whether or not you're an asshole. If you are, then after the 2 weeks is over, you part and there's no hard feelings. But if you aren't, they keep you on. So my 2 weeks turned into 2 years. And so I started out storyboarding the film, and I was doing traditional storyboards, and John Milius came by and said, no, I love your comics work. I want you to do storyboards that look like comic book pages. So I changed course, and I started to do comic book page style storyboards. And it was taking me a long time because I was designing everything from scratch. I was designing the Sumerian village. I was designing the costumes. I was designing Thulsa Doom's warriors' costumes. I was designing the armor for the horses. And but I was in a room with Ron Cobb and watching what Ron was doing. I thought, wow, that looks even more fun than what I'm doing. So I started to design the things that Ron didn't have time for.
I don't know if you can see me. I see you, but you are frozen again.
Oh.
You was frozen again. Maybe because we are. I told also for everyone that watch right now the stream. We live in two different countries. I live in North Italy, And you, in which state you live?
I'm in Southern California.
From California to
Yeah.
North Italy, maybe the connection sometimes.
Near Los Angeles. Yeah. Okay, so what was the last thing you heard?
I heard about that the storyboard like a comic book.
Oh,
The
okay.
idea too.
Yes. So the storyboarding that way was taking me a long time because I was also creating the costumes for the characters. I was creating the armor for the horses. I was creating the Sumerian village. And eventually I started to design things that Ron Cobb did not have time for. So we were actually for the first year and a half, it was just the two of us designing the entire motion picture. And I was getting an amazing education in filmmaking because we were also sharing offices with Steven Spielberg. So Ron and I would work on Conan during the day, and then at 6 o'clock, put our pens down and walk across the hall to Steven's office. And we started kicking around ideas for Steven's next film, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And when I started, Kathleen Kennedy was our receptionist. Within 2 months, she was John Milius's personal assistant. Within 2 months after that, she was Steven Spielberg's personal assistant. And then 2 years later, she produced E.T. So
Cool.
An amazing, very fast rise in the business. And I found out that there is so much at stake financially with movies that if you can deliver, you get hired over and over and over. It's a very small world. Everybody knows everybody, and they share who's good and who's not.
And you work a lot also with George Lucas.
Yes.
You have some story about that, about this relationship?
Sure. I met George through John Milius and through Steven Spielberg. They were all three friends. And I remember I went to a party that was at a place called the Egg Company. That was the secret name for the company that was making Star Wars. And I got to talk to George there. And he's really responsible for my career as a movie poster artist because I was asked to do a poster for Star Wars back when no one knew about Star Wars. And then I got hired to do the very first commercial exploitation of Star Wars. I got hired to do, I think it was 22 Coca-Cola cup designs for Burger King. And so about every 5 years or so, George gives me a job. He directed American Graffiti, but he also wanted to do the sequel, More American Graffiti. Now, for American Graffiti, he hired Mort Drucker from Mad Magazine to do the poster because he felt that Mort Drucker really represented the 1950s. For More American Graffiti, that took place in the 1960s, so he wanted Robert Crumb to do that poster, but Robert didn't want to do it. So George asked me if I would draw the poster in a Robert Crumb style, which I did, and so that's how that poster came about. George also hired me to do the art for re-release of American Graffiti, and that's really how I got my foot in the door for doing movie posters. Now, the advertising studio did not want to use me because I was an unknown entity. They didn't know if I could deliver or not. But when I delivered on the American Graffiti art, they suddenly started giving me loads of art, loads of posters to do. So that was fantastic. I did a Star Wars art for George. I asked him, I said, who's the character that no one wants to do? He said, nobody wants to do the Ewoks. So I said, let me do the Ewok. So I did that. I did a piece in the, I think it was this, some big Star Wars art book. I did it was a stormtrooper on top of one of those big lizards. And that was sort of an homage to Ron Cobb. Ron Cobb had done an incredible painting that John Milius bought. And it's basically a guy dressed a little bit like an Arab on top of a big lizard in the middle of the desert. Well, George Lucas saw that, and that was one of the big inspirations for Star Wars. So when I did my piece, George immediately recognized where I was coming from when I was doing what I did. So
cool.
Very good relationship with George.
Okay, I have a consideration I want to share with you. Now we live in a weird moment of our life.
Yes.
In every place, every country, the world is a very weird moment. For example, right here in Italy, we have another lockdown, for example. But in this moment, I think that make art and an artist is an important rule, because each type of art is like an escape to stay better. Like I also collecting action figure. Like this channel also is to, because also behind an action figure there is an artist and more artists. For example, this figure is inspired by your heart, and other artists they created this figure. But also, when I'm a writer of novel, for example, every type of artist has an important role, because can give to the people an escape to stay better, and also sometimes to stay happy, because the artist looks like another world where you can forget the real life. What do you think about my consideration for that?
Well, that brings to mind a story of mine where I was talking to Jean Giraud, Mobius, about Richard Corbin. Richard Corbin had just done a beautiful book, and Mobius wrote him a letter, and he said, "Look, you now have proved that you are a master of comic art. So what are you going to do next? How are you going to use your incredible skills and talents to make the world a better place? That is your new job." And I completely bought into that. And from that moment on, I stopped taking jobs that were frivolous. Everything I did is I wanted to do something that would help make the world a better place, bring people together, and make people happy. So I think that's an important role for the artist, and for musicians, and for writers.
Cool. We are on the same page.
Yeah.
And speaking of your career, once again, you work also on the Michael Jackson Thriller.
Well, actually, what happened was I got a call from John Landis, the director of Thriller, of the video. And John asked me to storyboard the video. And I said, John, I've got too much work right now. There's no way. But I have a guy in my studio who's a fantastic artist. I think he'll do a great job. His name is Dave Stevens. And so John Landis hired Dave Stevens to do the storyboards for Thriller. And Dave did a great job. And Michael Jackson went crazy for the art that Dave did. And so he started to give Dave all kinds of other work on other projects.
Cool.
So,
and speaking of the storyboard, the process to create a storyboard for a movie like Master of the Universe, for example, what is the time process from the beginning and to the final moment to create the complete storyboard?
Well, I always start with the screenplay. That is my Bible. Everything comes from that. And when I'm storyboarding, one of the things that's very, very important to me is the entrance of a character. I don't like to throw that away. I want there to be a build-up to when you see who this character is, and the build-up should reveal something about that character. I was really inspired by Milton Caniff. He created a new comic strip called Steve Canyon. And the very first page of the comic strip, you don't see Steve Canyon. You see everyone's reactions to him as he's walking down the sidewalk. You can see by the woman's reaction that, oh, this guy's very attractive. The women really like him. This guy who looks like a criminal, he's afraid of Steve Canyon. And so you're getting this picture from other people's points of view. And then finally, the last panel is when you see Steve Canyon. So what a fantastic way to introduce that character. You learn so much about him by the reaction of all the other characters to him. So things like that are important to me. I always like to see each character given a beautiful entrance.
Cool. And you work also on Men in Black movie. What is your experience for that? Some story about this movie?
Well, that was funny. I was working for Steven Spielberg at the time. I was the chief designer for a series of nightclubs that he was doing. Nightclubs were called Sega GameWorks. Later, it got just shortened to GameWorks. And it was a joint venture between Sega Games, Universal, and DreamWorks. And what they were are video gaming arcades. And Steven called me up about that, and he said, I want you to design these arcades for me. And I said, Steven, you've got the wrong guy. I don't like video games. I don't like to go into arcades. They're black boxes where no one talks to anybody. He says, exactly. That's why I'm hiring you. I want you to design a place where girls feel comfortable, where women feel comfortable, and I want you to design a place. He said, I see society is fragmenting. Fewer people are going to the movies. They're building in-home sound systems so that they don't have to leave home to watch movies. I want you to design a place that brings people back together. And so I thought that was a very worthy goal to try to achieve. So I started working as the chief designer for GameWorks. Now, unfortunately, I just forgot your question.
No, because you have a long career and many awesome things. Therefore, it's like a travel in your in many things that you do. Therefore, I understand. Sometimes I have the same problem when sometimes I talk with someone and I forget the question because I goes in the travel of my thinking process. However, it was about Men in Black.
Oh yes, Men in Black. So I'm working for Steven Spielberg, and I get a frantic call from Industrial Light and Magic. They had just spent 9 months designing and animating the big bug at the end of the movie. It's Vincent D'Onofrio he plays a character named Edgar, and he turns into a big bug at the end of the film. And they showed it to Steven Spielberg, and Steven said, not scary enough. And they freaked out. They totally panicked because they had spent 9 months on this. So someone there said, you should call Bill Stout because Steven loves Bill's work and see if he can do a redesign. So they called me up and they told me the problem they were having. They said, could you redesign this creature, but not too much? We want to save as much as we can, but just make it scarier. And so while I'm on the phone, I'm starting to sketch the character already. And I think I faxed it to them the next day. And that's how I designed that big character at the end of the film.
Okay, and on your website, I take a closer look also of your resume. And I saw something that I never know before, that you worked also with David Lynch, one of my favorite directors. Have you some story about Lynch?
Oh, I got a lot of stories about David. He's a real character. Have you ever seen the show Twin Peaks?
Yes.
Okay, you know Kyle MacLachlan, his character?
Yes.
He's playing David. That's exactly the way David is. So
cool.
It was interesting. David and I share a lot of friends in common. And they all kept saying, oh, Bill, you've got to meet David Lynch. You two will hit it off. You're so similar in so many ways. It'll be amazing. So I'm working on Conan the Destroyer, the second Conan film, down in Mexico City. And at the same time, David Lynch is making Dune for the same production company, for Dino De Laurentiis. So I'm seeing David every day at the commissary where we have lunch. And finally, I walk over to him. I said, look, David, we have these friends in common. They all said we should meet and get together. And David said, well, let's have some lunches together. I said, sounds great. So we had a whole series of lunches together. And I'm trying to connect with David. And I said, do you like horror movies and monsters? He goes, oh, no, I don't like to be scared. I go, what? Are you kidding me? You created one of the scariest characters ever, Dennis Hopper. And, oh, my God. And so I tried something else. I would say, how about this? What about this? And boy, it just wasn't happening. We weren't connecting on anything. And David was more like, this is a great cup of coffee, solid cup of coffee. Or he'd want to talk about watering his lawn. And I'm like, seriously, watering your lawn? That's what thrills you, David? My God. Then one day he said, the boys, Bill, you haven't met the boys. I got to introduce you to the boys. Well, sure, okay. So we go outside and we go across the studio and upstairs to his office. And he opens the door and there's a little sofa, a little couch. And on the couch are 6 identical Woody Woodpecker dolls. And he said, Bill, these are the boys. That's Chewy, Freddie, Frank, Joey, Tori, Louie, and Muck. Boys, meet Bill. Well, what do you say? I just said, well, hi, boys. It was crazy. And then a few days later, I remember I was walking to work and I looked up at David's office because he had windows overlooking the lot. And there were all 6 of the boys looking down at us. But one of the things I really admired about David is he never stopped being a fine artist. Even though he's directing this gigantic film of Dune, he was still taking the time out to make his fine art pieces. And they would just mysteriously appear on the walls of the studio. And one of them was he had taken a big fly and he had taken it all apart and he put it on a piece of paper, and then he had assembly instructions. How to he called it a fly kit. And then he did the same thing with the fish as well. And so you never knew what was going to happen with David. Just such a character.
Awesome. You made also many movies that I love. Lost Highway of Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very good.
Yeah. Good film. I loved Elephant Man. That's a great movie.
Elephant Man is also a sad movie. Elephant Man, however.
Yeah.
Yes, it's sad, so sad. In general, it's one of my favorite director.
Yeah.
But back to your career.
Oh, I got to do a little work on Dune because we were sharing offices with the Dune people and with Conan the Destroyer and stuff. The person who was editing the sound on Dune was just down the hall from me. And one day he came running in. He says, "Is there anybody here with a California accent?" And I said, "Well, I'm from California, but I don't have an accent." He says, "Come with me." And so he brought me back to his room. And he said, "Okay, I need you to say these lines." And so I said the lines, and he recorded me saying them. And they were the dialogue for a black robot that is in the movie. And I said, "So are you happy with what I did?" He says, "Yeah, that was great." I said, "Yeah, but I thought you wanted a California accent." He says, "Oh, you've got a California accent." He said, "One of your lines was, that's just the way I found him." And you said, "That's just the way I found him." You said found him instead of found him. You Californians, you run your words together all the time. And so he said, "David's going to love that. It'll be so unusual."
And you work also in Predator movie.
Yes, I did the very first designs for the Predator. It was Rick Baker who brought me in on that. And the second meeting I had with the director and with the production designer and with Rick, I said to John McTiernan, the director, I said, "John, you've got a great thing going here. You're going to get two completely different audiences with this motion picture." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, look, you're going to get the action adventure crowd. That's a gimme. They're going to love this movie. But you're going to get another audience as well because of the way the film ends." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, at the end, Arnold kills the Predator, and he's looking down at the corpse, and he's looking, and he looks closer and closer, and he reaches down and he opens up the armor, and inside is this tiny, frail little alien." And I said, "What an incredible commentary on man as hunter who has to load himself up with all this technology and stuff to go hunt." I said, "It's just fantastic. You're going to get a whole nother audience there." And so McTiernan thought about it, went back, opened up his script, looked at it, and right in front of me, he tore those pages out of the screenplay. And I said, "John, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, we can't have that ending. That would mean that Arnold beat up a wimp." So that's how I ruined the end of Predator.
And what about your paleontological art, the dinosaur stuff? Because is a main work in your career.
Yes, in the well, I've been crazy about dinosaurs ever since I was a little kid. The very first movie I ever saw was King Kong. I saw it at a drive-in when I was 3 years old. They had re-released it in 1952. And not long after that, I saw The Rite of Spring sequence in Fantasia. Well, I think my DNA was changed. I've been crazy about dinosaurs ever since. Well, in the mid-1970s, my friend Don Glut, he had written a book called The Dinosaur Dictionary. And he figured it was time. There had been so many new discoveries of new dinosaurs that it was time to revise the book. And his goal was to have a picture for every listing. So he asked me if I would do 4 of the pictures, and that turned into 44. And my regular publisher, Byron Price, was visiting from New York, and he said, "Bill, if you could do a book on anything that you would like to do, what would you do it on?" And I thought he was just being conversational. And I said, I really don't know. And he saw all these dinosaur dictionary pictures around my studio, and he said, "Would you like to do one on dinosaurs?" I said, "Oh, sure." And I forgot about it. And 2 months later, he calls me up. He says, "Bill, we got our book deal. Bantam wants to do your dinosaur book. Suddenly I had this gigantic project dropped in my lap. Well, the first thing I did is I joined the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. That's the group of scientists that study dinosaurs. And I started attending their meetings every year. It's in a different city every year. And I became very close friends with a lot of these guys. They were very forthcoming with their information. And so each dinosaur that I did, I would find the guy who actually discovered the dinosaur. And this was before email. So I would snail mail my preliminary sketches to this paleontologist and get his comments and criticisms. And then he would write back and send me that until we would go back and forth until we were both happy with what I came up with. And when I was doing that, I thought, you know what? The dinosaurs not only have to be accurate because it may be the only time the public ever gets to see a picture of this dinosaur, but the setting should be accurate too. So I started to study paleobotany, started studying prehistoric plants so that the right plants would be there as well, and started studying geology to know whether this dinosaur was by a lake or up in the mountains or out in the desert. And so that turned into my first big book called The Dinosaurs, A Fantastic New View of Lost Era, which I believe was published in Italian. And from then on, I became the dinosaur man. And cool. My favorite thing in the world is painting big murals for natural history museums. My first 2 murals were for the Houston Museum of Natural Science in Texas. I did 3 for Walt Disney's Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida. And I did 12 huge murals for the San Diego Natural History Museum, and then 2 more for the San Diego Zoo next door. So I love that because it's big physical work. It's not just this, it's working with my arm. And well, it's also an artistic legacy. Those murals will be up long after I'm gone. One of my big heroes is Charles R. Knight, who did the murals for the American Museum in New York, for the Field Museum in Chicago, and our La Brea Tar Pit mural for Los Angeles. He's a big hero of mine. And the first thing I do whenever I go to New York is I go see his murals. Same when I go to Chicago. So that's a real passion for me. Plus it uses so much of my artistic skills and knowledge. I have to be a good landscape painter. I have to know animal anatomy. I have to know the botany. I have to know color, the settings, the design, composition. It really calls into play almost everything I've learned as an artist.
Awesome. Awesome. And speaking of the murals, what is the time to create a complete murals?
It depends how big, and it depends how many creatures are in the mural. It depends upon the setting. The biggest mural I've done so far is 14 feet tall by 34 feet long, and it depicts a feeding frenzy in San Diego Bay 2 million years ago. And I think that took about 5 months to do. And I did another one that was 10 feet tall by 38 feet long, showing the dinosaurs of San Diego. That one took probably about 3 or 4 months.
With these murals, you became a modern Michelangelo.
Michelangelo he became a big hero of mine. It was interesting. When I took my wife to Italy, one of the things we wanted to do was, of course, go to Florence and see Michelangelo's David. So I got our tickets to see the David sculpture. It wasn't for another couple hours, so we decided to have lunch. We were having lunch, and originally we were in Europe because I was a guest at a comic book convention. And when I was at that convention, one of my fans came up to me and gave me a comic book he had done as a gift, and it said Stendhal syndrome. And I said, oh, that's what does that mean? He says Stendhal syndrome is a psychological illness that it's an overreaction to art. It can be debilitating. It can last for years. I said, oh, I've never heard of that. Interesting. So we're having lunch in Florence, and there's a guy sitting next to me, and I started talking to him. I said, where are you from? He says, oh, I'm from Finland. Oh, interesting. You're on vacation? He says, no, I'm working here. I'm a photographer. I said, oh, what kind of photo work do you do? He says, well, I work for a psychology magazine. I'm shooting photographs for an article on Stendhal syndrome. And it's one of those things when you learn a new word, you suddenly start hearing it all over the place and it starts popping up. And so there it was again, Stendhal syndrome. And then we were walking back to the Academia where the Michelangelo's David is, and there's a big book display in a bookstore on Stendhal syndrome. I'm going, wow, what are the odds? I only just learned about this. So we go into the academia, and when you see the David, you turn the corner and you're looking down a long hallway, and then there's a sort of a dome or an arc or an arch over his head, and you're seeing the classic pose of David that you see in all the photographs. And I looked at it and I started to shake. I started to shiver. Tears were flowing from my eyes like a river. And I had to turn away. I couldn't look at the David. Finally, I calmed down. When I turned back to look at it again, it started all over again. I was having an attack of Stendhal syndrome. It was very bizarre. And it took me about half an hour before I could actually look at the statue of David and not just fall apart. The interesting thing about that statue is you're looking at it from the point of view of David's people as David is facing Goliath. And the look on David's face is sheer confidence, like, yeah, I can take this guy. But if you walk around to the front, to Goliath's point of view, looking at David, the expression on the marble face of David changes to terror, changes to fear. And I was like, how can you do that with marble? How can the face change? It's amazing. So from that point on, I tracked down every Michelangelo sculpture in Florence, and I found 5 more where as you walk around the statue, the face changes expression. Amazing.
Wow. This is the magic of the art.
Yeah.
Like I told you before, it's the power of the art also. Yes. And speaking of Stendhal syndrome, there is also an Italian movie about that by Dario Argento, made a movie for that.
Oh, he made a movie called Stendhal syndrome? Really?
Yes, he's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine, Dario. Also.
Oh my God, I got to track that down. That's incredible.
And you work also with Christopher Nolan. You have some story about this experience.
Yeah, that was on the movie The Prestige. And it was interesting because they hired me to do magic posters that looked like they were done in 1900. And they weren't to advertise the film. They were to be used in the film. There was a scene that got cut from the film where one of the magicians are played, by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And so there was a scene where I think it was Christian Bale was at the lithographers, and he's watching as they're pulling the posters off the litho stones. And I had designed all those posters to look like they had been done in 1900. And Christopher Nolan said, when you do the posters, I want the posters also to reflect their descent into insanity. So the posters start out sort of light and cheery and then get darker and darker and darker. And the final poster I did of Christian Bale is just his face, and he's looking up into the sky, and there's a shooting star coming across the sky, and in the background in the sky there's a big skull. So he's contemplating life and death, and the shooting star is a bad omen traditionally. So I thought it was interesting that Christopher wanted those posters also to reflect what was going on with the characters and in their lives and in their minds. Fantastic mind, Christopher Nolan.
Cool, yes, another awesome director. And speaking of, you work also on the movie The Mist, based on a Stephen King story.
The Mist. Correct? The writer-director of The Mist is Frank Darabont, and Frank's a very old friend of mine and a big collector of my work. He owned a lot of my originals. And he called up, he said, look, I finally got a chance where we can work together on a motion picture. It's called The Mist. It's written by Stephen King. And so I immediately bought the book, and I read that story and started doing designs for the creatures. And the next day I got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so I told the director, I told Frank, I said, look, I've already done all these designs. You're welcome to use them. You don't have to pay me for them, but I'm afraid I can't work on the motion picture because I need to have surgery for this prostate cancer. And so my life has just taken a left turn. And so he was fine with that. The main design of mine that got used were those big spiders. But I thought Frank did an amazing job with the film. He had just directed a television show.
Maybe you was frozen again, maybe.
Oh, okay. Frank Darabont had just directed a television show called The Shield, and he was so impressed by how
because we are in the different country, my friends. Yeah. I believe that maybe you are back. You was frozen again.
Okay. Where did we leave off?
You talks about your life was changed.
Oh yes, from the prostate cancer. Yes. So I thought Frank made an amazing film. To me, it was like a really great Twilight Zone. In fact, he shot it in black and white, and then the studio forced him to release it in color. So that was frustrating for him. But I think it works great in black and white. If you get the Blu-ray, you can watch it in black and white if you want.
Yes. You never meet Stephen King?
No, I haven't. It's funny because we have a lot of friends in common. Like Bernie Wrightson was very close to Stephen, and I think Frank Darabont was too.
Yes. And speaking of your travel to Antarctica and Patagonia, what is this experience?
Oh, that was
strong experience, I believe.
That was probably the greatest trip of my life. What happened was I used to be the biggest movie nut you would never want to meet. I mean, I would go to every film festival. I'd go to movie marathons. I would see every movie that came out. And one day I was living in Hollywood at the time, and I was walking up the sidewalk, and I was very excited because I was going to see a new movie. And a friend of mine spotted me from his car, and he pulled over. He said, "Hey, Bill, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, man, I'm going to go see this new movie." And he looked at me like I was some kind of schmuck. And he said, "New movie? Really? 2 hours alone in the dark." He says, "You could be having your own adventures instead of watching somebody else's." Well, that just flipped a switch in me. From that moment on, every year I would schedule an adventure somewhere around the world. I think the first one was going to the Galapagos Islands and to Machu Picchu in Peru. And around 1989, I had these beautiful photo books by the greatest photographers in the world on Antarctica. And they all said the same thing. Try as they could, there was no way they could capture the color of Antarctica because of the limitations of the photochemicals. And I thought, well, I don't have that problem. Anything I see, I can put down onto paper. And then I found out that the treaty, the Antarctic Treaty, was due to expire. The treaty that protected Antarctica was due to expire in 1991. And I thought, I better get down there fast before I don't have a chance to see Antarctica anymore. Well, I went down on a cruise ship, and I was not prepared for how spectacular Antarctica was. And I knew I had to do something to help save and preserve this place for my children and grandchildren. And I thought, well, when my friends asked me, "Where's your adventure going to be this year?" and I said Antarctica, they would say, "Why do you want to go there? It's just a bunch of snow and ice." Or, "Oh, you're going to go to Antarctica, you're going to paint it, bring lots of white." So it was so much more than that. One night, it was midnight. I was on the deck of the ship, and the sky went from a lime green to an apricot orange. The sea was mint green. There were blue-violet icebergs in the background. And right next to the ship, there was an iceberg with a lemon yellow light emanating just from below the surface of the water. It's just the most extraordinary color combinations I've ever seen. And so I thought, what can I do that is not just a bunch of snow and ice? And I thought, I know, I'll go back home and I'll do an exhibition of oil paintings that depict the diversity of life of Antarctica. And to make sure that every kid brings their parents to see this show, half the show will be prehistoric Antarctica. So as soon as I got back to the United States, I flew to Columbus, Ohio, to the Bird Polar Research Center, and I got a crash course in Antarctic paleontology. And I began to do these paintings. Now, ironically, it was the United States that created the treaty, but was not going to re-sign it in 1991. The original treaty states that no one owns Antarctica, all wildlife is protected, there's no commercial exploitation of the continent allowed, there's no mining, no oil drilling. All information is shared. Even at the height of the Cold War, the Soviets could come to any of our stations and look at what we were doing, and we could do the same with them. So it was this little oasis of sanity in the world that was about to come to an end because the first President Bush wanted to open it up for oil drilling because he was a Texas oil man. So I approached the director of the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles, and I told him, this is what I want to do. I want to do an exhibition on Antarctica to alert people to the fact that this is a place that needs to be saved. And I had done my first 5 paintings. I showed him the paintings. He said, Bill, you've got your show, and we will travel it for you. And they traveled my exhibition all over the world. It was 45 oil paintings, half prehistoric and half contemporary Antarctica. And I used to subscribe to what I call the pinball school of career planning. I go boing, boing, boing all over the place. And because I have a restless curiosity. And as soon as I do something and I know I can do it, I lose interest and I go to do something else. Well, I didn't have that happen with this. When I finished the 45 oil paintings, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep doing this. I felt like I had come home somehow. And so I put another goal to myself, which is 100 oil paintings depicting the history of life of Antarctica from earliest prehistoric times to the present day. So I think that will be my most important book. I've done 80 of the 100 paintings so far. And so I'm about to start number 81 this week.
And speaking of the temperature, because everybody knows that it's so cold, yes. What is the days that you live in Antarctica to watch everything? What is your physical reaction for different temperature, something like that?
Well, it was funny because after I'd finished the exhibition, was traveling, I decided to work on a book on this subject. I was notified that the National Science Foundation in the United States has a program called the Antarctic Artists and Writers Program. And it's a grant that they offer to artists, writers, and photographers. And if you get the grant, you get to go down to Antarctica and you can do whatever you want as long as when you come back, you create something that tells the public about Antarctica. So I applied for the grant and I got the grant. So I got to go live in Antarctica for 4 months. 2 months based at Palmer Station and 2 months based at McMurdo Station. McMurdo Station is the biggest station in Antarctica. During the Antarctic summer, there's 1,200 people there. Palmer Station is the smallest station in Antarctica because there's only 39 people because there's only 39 beds at the station. So one of the things I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to scuba dive underneath the ice. So I asked the National Science Foundation, what would it take for you to allow me to do that? They said, okay, you have to get open water certification, advanced open water certification, medic first aid certification, dry suit diver certification, ice diver certification, and rescue diver certification. I finished all of those just 2 weeks before I left for Antarctica. And the diving in Antarctica is the best scuba diving in the entire world. On a really good day in the Great Barrier Reef or in the Bahamas, visibility is 120 feet. In Antarctica, the visibility is 1,200 feet. It's clearer than the air in this room. It is absolutely astonishing. Plus the extreme cold of the water. The water is 28 degrees. It doesn't freeze at 32 because it's salt water. So it's 28 degrees, extremely cold. And that extreme cold makes creatures tend towards gigantism. So I was swimming with 10-foot tall sponges.
Wow.
Purple scallop the size of dinner plates. It was absolutely extraordinary. It was the all-time best trip of my life.
Wow. Yes, I imagine that is a big experience also. And you work also for some music band to create it. I read something about Rolling Stone. You work also something about that, some the cover from some album.
Yes. In the United Kingdom, I'm not famous for my dinosaurs or my other stuff. I'm famous for a series of record album covers I did. They were bootleg record albums. A bootleg record album is when someone goes to a concert and tapes the show and then releases it on vinyl. So back in the 1970s, it was very loose. It was very easy to do that. You could bring a big Sony tape recorder and tape the entire concert if you wanted to. Or so I had been to a Led Zeppelin concert that was especially fantastic, and I saw lots of people taping it. So I knew there was going to be a bootleg record of it. Usually they would press up 100 or 200 copies and just sell them on the street in Hollywood. This time, I think about 2 weeks later, finally that Led Zeppelin bootleg, I saw it in the bin at my favorite record store, and I was so disappointed by the cover. It was so crappy and amateur. And out loud, I said, I wish someone would get me to do these bootleg record album covers. And a guy tapped me on the shoulder. He said, you want to do bootleg record album covers? I said, yeah. He says, okay. Meet me at Selma and Las Palmas, Friday night, 6 p.m. Be alone. So, whoa, what is this? What's this? So that's a kind of a seedy part of Hollywood. It's sort of dangerous, but I decided I would go anyway. So I was standing there Friday night, 6 p.m., and this car drives up with smoked windows. Couldn't see who was inside. And passenger window came down a little bit, and a piece of paper came out, and I took it, and it said Rolling Stones Winter Tour, and there was a list of songs. And the voice inside the car said, see you in 2 weeks, same time, same place, be alone. So I did my first bootleg record album cover. It was inspired by the Cheap Thrills cover by Robert Crumb. I like the idea of every song having an illustration, and also that there are caricatures of the different band members on the cover as well. So I turned that in, and that was my beginning of my relationship with a company called Trademark of Quality Records. They were produced only bootleg record albums. And I did a whole lot of Rolling Stones albums because they were big Stones fans, but I also did the Yardbirds, I did the Beatles, I did, Santana, Deep Purple, a lot of different bands. And then a friend of mine was, he used to sell me EC comic books, but he also would occasionally publish things. And there was a comedy group in Los Angeles called the Firesign Theater. It was 4 guys, and they did the most extraordinary comedy albums I've ever heard. They were heavily, heavily layered. So they were the only comedy albums I could listen to over and over and over again and find something new each time I listened to it. So I was a big fan of these guys. And my friend Dave Gibson found out that they had printed a little fanzine for their neighborhood called the Mixville Rocket. And he got permission from the Firesign Theater to republish all of these fanzines into one book. And he asked me to do the cover. Well, I did the cover, and I was very conscientious about making the cover look like a sort of visual version of what it feels like to listen to one of their records. It was just jam-packed with all kinds of jokes and humor and pop imagery. And the Firesign Theater guys saw it and loved it, and so they hired me to do their next album cover for Columbia Records. And so I made sure that I didn't mention that I did bootlegs to Columbia. Columbia really was resistant in using me because they didn't know who I was. They didn't know if I could do a record album cover. But what I delivered was not just a record album cover. I did 2 front covers, so no matter which way it was in the record bin, you were looking at a front cover. They loved that. Plus, I was smart enough to know, always put the title at the very top of the album, because if they're flipping through a bin, that's all they can see. So from that point on, I started to get regular work from Columbia Records. And my most requested book is a book that record album covers and all my music-related art. Just a few years ago, I think around 2006, it was the United States declared it the Year of the Blues. Well, the blues, that's my desert island music. That's my favorite kind of music of all time. And so Shout Factory hired me to do some covers of blues collections. For most of the covers, they used Robert Crumb's Heroes of the Blues trading cards. But there were 3 people that Crumb hadn't drawn, and he didn't want to do any more. So they asked me if I would draw them in the same format that Robert did. I had so much fun with that when I was recuperating from my cancer surgery, I made a list of everybody that Robert hadn't drawn, and I did portraits of all those people. And pretty soon I had 50 portraits. And Roberts were originally done as trading cards and then collected in a book. So I contacted Robert's agent, Dennis Kitchen, who's an old friend of mine, and I said, look, I've done all these blues characters. I'd like to do them as trading cards. And he said, Bill, did you ever notice anything interesting or unusual about Robert's cards? I go, yeah, he did all those really ancient guys. He goes, yep, public domain. He says, the guys you're doing occur much later, and so you're going to have to deal with them or their estate or their families, get their permission, probably have to pay them for the right to use the likeness. You live in California, so they have really strong celebrity laws there. And I said, oh, that sounds like a nightmare. I guess I just did them for myself. He said, would you consider doing them as a book? I said, wouldn't I run into the same problem? He says, no, books are not considered exploitation. They're considered a benefit to the public, unlike, say, T-shirts or posters or prints. And I said, that sounds great. And so I had Dennis represent me. And the feedback I got from Abram Comic Arts, who decided to do the book, they said, well, we love your book. Instead of 50, could you do 100? I said, I'd be happy to do 100. And so that book, Legends of the Blues, came out, went into a second printing. The book includes a CD that I produced of blues music, and it's the first of a 3-volume set. I just finished Legends of the British Blues. That's 111 portraits of my favorite British blues musicians. The third book is going to be Modern Legends of the Blues, so that'll have like Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jack White, Paul Butterfield, guys like that. So I'm always been heavily into music.
And speaking of, there is I heard a delay of my voice. There is a feedback of my voice now. Audio feedback, I don't know. However, speaking of music, it's related a little bit of blues, but it's not a typical musician of blues. However, I want to discover your opinion about Ry Cooder. What do you think about Ry Cooder music?
Ry Cooder is phenomenal. He's one of my favorite musicians of all time. And, you know, it's funny, when I appear regularly at Comic-Con International and other comic conventions around the world. And occasionally I'll get the fan who's so nervous to meet me that they can barely, they're shaking and they can barely get a word out. And I say, look, relax. Everybody is someone else's fanboy, you know? And then I tell them, I said, let me tell you about the time I met Ry Cooder. I said, my guitar player makes all of Ry Cooder's equipment for him. And my guitar player was going to get married. And he invited me to the wedding. I said, oh, who's coming to the wedding? And he listed a bunch of people. And then he said, and Ry Cooder is coming to attend. Because Ry Cooder became my guitar player as one of his very best friends. And I said, Ry Cooder is coming to your wedding? Oh my God. He said, yeah. And he said, Ry loves to jam too. Since our band is going to be playing, you'll be able to probably jam with Ry Cooder. I go, jam with Ry Cooder? Oh my God. Oh. So for the next 2 months, I did exactly what I shouldn't have done. I started writing down everything I wanted to say to Ry Cooder and making a list of every single topic that I wanted to talk to Ry Cooder about. So the big day comes. We're at the wedding reception, and my guitar player, Jimmy, he comes over. He says, Bill, I promised I would introduce you to Ry Cooder, so come with me. And so he brings me across the way, and Ry Cooder's sitting at a table, and Jimmy gives me this beautiful introduction. And as soon as he's finished, I start talking like Elmer Fudd on speed. I'm like, oh, gee, Mr. Cooder, I'm your biggest fan. I know everything you ever did. You did that. And they did this. And now I'm having an out-of-body. I am above myself, watching myself rave and rant like a madman. And I'm saying to myself, shut up, you're totally blowing it. And Ry has started to back. He's starting to back away from this crazy person. And it was a total disaster. But I'm still a gigantic Ry Cooder fan.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan. Also, my father was a big fan. He introduced me to Ry Cooder music, and my brother plays with the guitar many songs of Ry Cooder's. Mm-hmm. And I love so much Ry Cooder. It has something special, especially with this touch with the fingers on the string of the guitars. something unique, and is also in his style is unique in my opinion. To
Yeah.
me, is the best guitar player and composer in the world. To me, right? Speaking of the guitar, better than everyone. To me, is my opinion.
I think I would agree with you. He's such an extraordinary musician.
There is some question about the fan. Many question also was before for Master of the Universe.
Sure, let's hear it.
Okay, when you needs to go, give me some signs because when you needs to go, give me some signs.
Okay.
Okay, because we have many questions for the fans. But there is a comments for a fan of the Master of the Universe that says that both Blade and Sword were unique creation, but why no Triclops or Whiplash were the issues regarding original character for the final film?
Well, that was because Mattel wanted to reinvigorate the Masters of the Universe toy line, so they wanted new characters. They knew they had to keep some of the old characters for the film, but they wanted a lot more new characters because they figured it would make them more money. It was as simple as that.
Okay, another question.
Also, I'm very happy that we did not have to do Stinkor.
Stinker, yes. So are the space gods supposed to be the founders of Eternia?
In a sense, yes, they're both the founders of Eternia, but they're also inspirational gods that the people of Eternia pray to and hold in high reverence.
There is now I have a new question for Master of the Universe. You know what is the plan for the story for the sequel movie?
No, I never saw a screenplay for the sequel. They borrowed, I was going to say they borrowed a bunch of art to make the sequel, but they never gave it back. So, but I think a sequel was out of the question for Canon because they had gone bankrupt.
Yes, and there is another question also for the Master of the Universe. Could we ever see a Master of the Universe uncut or longer version released on DVD? William, says this guy.
Well, as I said, I'm amazed we got a beginning, middle, and end. I don't think there's any leftover footage that could lengthen the film. However, I saw it recently. The American Cinematheque had a screening at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, and boy, that screening sold out so fast. And I did a little talk before the film with Chelsea Field, who played Tila, and then watched the film with the rest of the audience. Boy, everybody laughed at the right places, cheered at the right places, and at the end, when He-Man says, "I have the power," I thought the roof was going to come off the theater. The place just went crazy. And it was so gratifying for me as a filmmaker to see that that film is still effective on people.
Yes, yes, very effective. Also today, because when I purchased the figure from Super 7, like He-Man, for example, at that time, I started to watch many times the movie because when I like a movie in general, I watch over and over this movie. I remember when I watched, for example, the first time Ed Wood from Tim Burton.
Oh, that's my favorite Tim Burton movie.
Me too. I remember in 1 month I watched this movie 12 times.
Wow!
To discover everything in the scene, also the Martin Landau, Bela Lugosi was also in that movie. Very cool.
When I was making Masters of the Universe, Tim Burton was in the building right next to me. He was making Beetlejuice. And so awesome. Tim and I became friends, and then he wanted me to production design Beetlejuice. So I was going to be the production designer for Tim Burton, but then Masters of the Universe ran over schedule, and Tim couldn't wait anymore, so it didn't happen.
Oh, this is sad because you, along with Tim Burton, imagine the sky is the limit for because I think the universe of Tim Burton is perfect also for your universe.
Oh, we would have had so much fun together.
Yes. There is another question, a long question, however. If I can ask you any question, Mr. Stout, it will be, did you design the Castle Grayskull? Want me to go more for tech look at in the Franzetta light coming out from the ground organic look?
Well, when I was designing Masters of the Universe, the interesting thing to me was I was designing a world that was both high tech and low tech. I mean, they fought with swords, but they also had ray guns. They also had more modern and technological weapons as well. And I figured that would also come into the world that they were in. That Castle Grayskull wouldn't just be a big rocky skull with some spires. There would be tech elements to it, so that it bridged both worlds. And that was very important to me, to bridge the high-tech and the low-tech world in a single image.
Okay, another question is, what made you choose to replace this Iron Cross with the dragon designs? I believe he talks about this part of he talks about this one, I believe.
Well, I knew he had to have an insignia on his chest. And if I don't remember if I knew it was an Iron Cross or not. If it was an Iron Cross, I definitely would not have used it because of the association with the Nazis.
Yes.
So, and I love dragons, so it became a dragon.
Another question, did you ever meet Frank Franzetta?
Frank Frazetta and I were very good friends. Now, as big a fan as people are of Frank Frazetta's work, that's the way Frank is about Frank Sinatra. So every year I would give Frank Frazetta a huge gift. One year I gave him the complete recordings at Columbia of Frank Sinatra, which came in a box the size of a big suitcase. And every year I'd send him rare Frank Sinatra things. And Frank made me promise if I came out east that I had to come to his home. And so my oldest son was going to Yale, which was on the East Coast in Connecticut. And so I thought, well, this is the perfect chance. I'll go visit my son, and after I see my son, I'll drive over to Pennsylvania to Frank's house and see Frank. So that's what I did, and boy, we had a great time together. He showed me all kinds of paintings and works and stuff, and it was funny. When I came to the door, he had King Kong playing on his big screen. So we hit it off immediately. And the next day, I said, look, Frank, my whole purpose of my being here is not to do anything for me. I want to do something for you, to help you, to make you happy, to pay you back for all the imagery that you've created that has influenced me. And I gave him a big stack of my sketchbooks, and I thought he would just set them aside and look at them later. He sat down and he looked at every single page for the next hour. I couldn't believe it. Cool. And I said, Frank, what is it you want to do more than anything? He says, could we see the grandkids? He had built his house and then 4 houses for each of his kids around this big lake that he had made. And so I said, Frank, I got a car, let's go. And so we went house to house to house, and it was Halloween. So all his little grandkids were getting dressed up in their costumes. It was fantastic. And I did drawings of dinosaurs for all his grandkids too. So yeah, we had a great time. He was a really special person. He launched the careers of thousands of artists. He was extraordinary.
Wow. You have also a big legacy of the comic books, art, and graphics novel. Tell me something about this part of your career.
Sure. Actually, right now, I'm 3-volume box set of all my comics-related work. And one of the first jobs I got out of art school, I was a big fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs and Tarzan of the Apes and John Carter of Mars. And in the mid-1960s, that was a real peak for interest in the works of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And there were a lot of fanzines devoted to Edgar Rice Burroughs. And the best one was a fanzine called Herbdom. And so a book that Burroughs had written but sort of disappeared became discovered. It was called I Am a Barbarian, and it was about the Emperor Caligula as told from the point of view of Caligula's personal slave. And so they're publishing a brand new first edition of this recently found book. And I got the book and I read it, and I did a whole set of my own illustrations. I think I did 6 black and white illustrations, and I sent them off to Herbdom. And a couple of years later, they printed them in the magazine, and I got a call from Russ Manning. Russ Manning is the writer-artist who was doing the Tarzan of the Apes Sunday and daily strips for the newspapers. And he asked me if I would like to be his assistant. And I was a huge
I don't know, maybe you're frozen again.
Oh, shoot.
However, guys, stay right here, because in a few moments I think that Bill will return, because we live in 2 different countries, and maybe you was frozen again, my friend.
Okay, so where did I leave off?
And you talked about the beginning of the comic book, the black and white. The last things that you talked about that.
Okay, so I graduated from art school. This was around 1971, 1970, and I had submitted illustrations for I Am a Barbarian to Herbdom magazine. They printed them, and I got a phone call from Russ Manning, who is the writer-artist of the Tarzan of the Apes Sunday and daily strips for the newspapers. He asked me if I would like to be his assistant. I jumped at the chance because I was a big Russ Manning fan. I loved his Magnus Robot Fighter comic, and I loved his Tarzan comic book adaptations of Edgar S. Burroughs' Tarzan novels. And so I learned an enormous amount working with Russ. And then I started doing my own comics for a magazine called Cycle Tunes. It was cartoon stories about motorcycles, even though I knew nothing about motorcycles. And I did one that was a tribute to Harvey Kurtzman, Will Elder, and Wally Wood. And when it was printed, I sent each of those guys a copy. I got a letter back from Harvey Kurtzman asking me if I would like to come back to New York and work with them on Little Annie Fanny for Playboy. Well, Kurtzman is one of the comic book gods. He was considered the godfather of the underground comic movement. So I jumped at the chance to do that. And I went back east, and I happened to be there for the very first EC convention. So I got to meet all of my EC heroes all in one spot. It was absolutely incredible. And I worked on a couple of episodes of Annie, and then came back to LA, and I stayed really good friends with Harvey Kurtzman, and we did a lot of projects together. My favorite one is the story I did called Shmagegi the Caveman, and it was a full color story that after it was done, Harvey Kurtzman called me up, and he offered me, he said, I would like you to take over Little Annie Fanny for Playboy. And I was amazed, but I turned him down. He says, why are you turning me down? He says, it's the best paying job in comics. I said, in comics, Harvey. I live in the real world, and working in advertising, I can make in 2 days what you would pay me for 1 month's work on Little Annie Fanny. So.
Okay, and speaking of the moment, the creation moment, for example, when I work on my novel, I listen music. I create a playlist of music that inspired me, then help me to more concentration during my work on the novel. When you work during your creation, you listen music to concentration or not?
I always have music playing. I try to pick the music that is appropriate to the subject matter that I'm working on in my drawings or my paintings. It's very important to me. One of the pieces of music I listen to the most are Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, also Debussy's Clair de Lune, sometimes movie scores. Yeah. What would life be without music? My God.
We have the same idea, because also for me, when I start a novel and I choose looks like the soundtrack for my novel. If I have a horror novel or music, I use many times music score or soundtrack for some movie, and because the music is a good help. Looks like the Virgilio of the artist process to go inside your idea. And I love it that also you have used the music during your work, because I understand why you do that, because the music is a big help to go in. Because I think, for example, when I write a novel, I don't know what happened in the story. There's not nothing is scheduled. I start, I watch the screen. I never watch the keyboard. I watch just the screen and go. I goes to another world. And this music helped me to make this travel in this world where there is some people that exist only just in my story. But the music is the secret window that I use to go through and to the story. And I think that there is the same process also for you.
Oh man, we are so similar, Alan. It's I can look at a painting and I can tell you what piece of music I was listening to with each part of the painting. And also, I'm sure this happens to you too, where you're working and you get into this zone where the work is just happening, and 2 hours later I can look back at it and I can say, how did I do that? I don't remember doing it. I know I was there because it's my painting, but you just get into this state of mind, and the music really helps that too. It helps to put you in another space that's makes it more conducive for creativity.
Yes, yes, I understand, because also sometimes I write some part of my novel with a closed eyes also. I to go inside with a closed eyes. I type in the story, and it was like a travel inside, very inside, and it's a magic moment, the creation, I believe, because you become you go in another world, and also in the same time. Uh, there's not a fiction. It's a real another world where the world of our creation with this and this process is very cool in my opinion. And not every artist has this process, because some artists says made a schedule this and following every steps. To me is a discover every chapter of my novel, and this process is magic.
Yeah. The way you write is also the way that Russ Manning wrote. When he was writing a Tarzan story for the Sunday newspapers, he would come up with a beginning, and he'd come up with an end, and he'd come up with a villain, a protagonist. But he wouldn't have any kind of schedule or anything, or more structure than that. He would just organically work on it, knowing that he was moving towards this end goal. And I think that's a great way to work. There's a lot of artists I've read about who know exactly what they're going to do when they begin a picture or a painting. I am not that person. I like the organic process of, I'll do some thumbnail sketches to give me an idea of where I'm going, but I like those happy accidents to occur in the making of what I'm doing. To me, that's a lot of the fun, that's a lot of the pleasure of creation, is not knowing what's going to happen and being surprised when something wonderful happens.
Yes, yes, I'm agree with you also, because a novel, like an artwork, like everything, every piece of art, as a personal life. I know, and if you schedule everything, you a little bit destroy the personal life of your story, of your artwork, and you need to following the life and the growing up of your artwork with no barricades, no limits. If you don't put limit of your art, your story, your art will become following the right way to become complete. And sometimes when I read after the first version of my novel, I'm surprised that everything going right, and I think, what happened? Why I scheduled nothing, and everything is perfect. I was so surprised for that. But I believe because I following just the river. I following the river.
That's a good way to put it. You go with the flow.
And speaking of your career in general, what is the work that you love so much of everything that you made before?
Oh, my favorite thing to do in the world is the painting of the big murals for the natural history museums, and also creating comic books. Comic books, unfortunately, doesn't pay very well. Actually, the murals don't pay very well either. But boy, it's such an incredible process to create something that large that is going to be seen by the public forever. So those are my two favorite things to do. I also like doing album covers and CD covers too. I've been doing a lot of those lately.
You never work in a stop motion video.
Oh, I'm a huge stop motion video fan, but we were going to do, when I was the production designer for Godzilla. Godzilla was going to be stop motion animation, so I had hired David Allen to do the stop motion animation. I hired Steven Cherkas to create the puppet with the robotics inside. I hired Rick Baker to create a gigantic Godzilla head that could be moved electronically. So yeah, big fan of stop motion, but I don't think anything that I've done is in the stop motion world has come out other than, well, this wasn't stop motion, but I worked as a designer on the Disney dinosaur film, and I helped them create the first 5 minutes. We wanted to show Michael Eisner that we could tell the entire story without any dialogue, that it could be all told visually. And that first 5 minutes of the film, that was our presentation reel to Eisner. Unfortunately, he insisted that they talk. I think it would have been a much better film if none of the dinosaurs talked.
I made some stop motion on this channel. On this channel, I made some stop motion with my action figure. If you want, I can show you one of them. Is a stop motion with some Masters of the Universe figures that I have.
Oh, that'd be cool. I'd love to see that.
Okay, I show you in a few seconds. I need to find it.
Okay.
And to share also in the screen, because there is also some ads before, but I try to share the screen with the video in a few seconds.
Okay.
Because I need also to, because there on YouTube there is some ads before, I need to stop the ads. There we go. Let's share screen. I find it. I mean, because I made some stop motion with some different toy line in this channel. This is my stop motion with Master of the Universe. This is the figure inspired by Super 7, but inspired from the cartoon, the Filmation cartoon. The beginning was there. I made also a little intro. The intro is not a stop motion, it's just the intro. But later, this is the stop motion.
I'm Iman, the powerful man in the universe, and I'm ready to defend the castle of Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
And this is it. Is a small stop motion, but because on this channel I made also some stop motion with. I have also a collection with a handmade figure for wrestling, old school wrestling, like Under the Giants, Hulk Hogan. I made also in this channel a federation of wrestling with these figures, and every week I created a stop motion show with the matchup between the wrestler.
So did you ever see The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad?
The same?
The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, the Harryhausen movie?
No, I never seen. No, I don't.
Oh, that's my favorite Harryhausen film. I wrote a sequel to that for Ray. Ray was a close friend of mine,
Oh,
and I wrote a sequel called The Eighth Voyage of Sinbad. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the financing for the film. The idea was that by this time Ray had retired. His last film was Clash of the Titans, and
okay.
which was not his best film. And we, friends and fans of Ray, we wanted him to go out on a sort of a high note. And so I wrote a sequel to The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And the idea was that each of the creatures was going to be given to a different effects house. And because everybody in LA is such a huge Ray Harryhausen fan, we knew that each effects house would try to outdo all the others, and we would get their absolute best work. And it would be and Ray would oversee all the special effects, and it would just be a great way to close his career.
Oh, awesome. And speaking of dinosaurs, you work also with Jurassic Park, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, it was funny. I received a mysterious package in the mail, and it was a manuscript, and there was a note on the top that said, "Read this. Don't look at the last page until you've read the entire book." I thought, well, that's sort of strange. So I started reading it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I should be. They should make a movie of this, and I should be the production designer. It was the manuscript before it was published of Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton.
Wow.
And I'm going, well, Alan Grant, that's I know who he based it on. I know all these people. They're all friends of mine. I know exactly what this should look like. Plus it's dinosaurs. I'm the dinosaur guy. Plus it's a theme park, and I've just been designing theme parks for Disney for the last 3 years. And then I get to the last page, and Michael Crichton gave me a really nice acknowledgement as an inspiration for the book. And I thought, oh, I'm so screwed. Because there's a Hollywood axiom that states that the more perfect you are for a project, the less likely it is that you will do it. The other Hollywood rule is that everyone wants what they think they can't have. And so if you actually go after a job, you're not going to get it. But this is the one time where I thought, you know what? Even though I know that rule, I'm going to go after it anyway, because I'm the perfect guy to design this motion picture. Well, I didn't get the job. Rick Carter got the job, but I had lunch with Rick every other week for several months, and I fed him stuff to put into the movie. And then later, Universal Cartoon Studios hired me to design an entire animated series for primetime based on Jurassic Park with CG vehicles and stuff. And I had a blast working on that. But unfortunately, by the time they got around to wanting to show it to Spielberg he was just fed up with all this commercialization of Jurassic Park, and he wouldn't even look at our trailer that we made. So that show never got off the ground.
This is sad, because I believe should be a cool project, this one.
Yeah, the scripts are great, and boy, the animation looked fantastic. It's a shame it didn't get made.
In your career, you made many awesome different things and awesome story also behind the scene. You never thought to write a book about your career, a biography or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people have asked me to write my autobiography, and that is too daunting a task. So what I'm doing is I'm writing my autobiography in a series of books. The first book was my Prehistoric Life Murals book, which Ray Harryhausen wrote the introduction to. And the book obviously discusses my murals, but it also talks about what was going on in my life at the time. My next book set is going to be a 3-volume box set on all my comics related work. And the text of that book, I talk about what it was like to work with Russ Manning, what it was like to work with Harvey Kurtzman, a lot of the travels that I've done in relation to comics. So slowly but surely my autobiography is coming out, but in a series of books, not just one book.
Oh, so I think maybe it's the better way, because you have many things to tell to us, because a long career with many different, and also different things, music, comic books, movie, a different way. And this is interesting because, for example, to me, I start as a musician, I become a writer. I'm also a YouTuber now, because I like make different things. You think it's good to become more creative, because make the same things in the entire life could be also a little bit boring, or maybe a little bit you can become a new robot or of yourself with the same things every day, song after song, concept after concept. I may believe, I remember 10 years ago, I stopped to do concert and show because I was bored for that. I was also upset with the music industry in Italy. There's a bad situation. I published just one song because it's difficult. If you have a personal vision in music in Italy, you become a strange guy, and the music producers say, thinking about what happened now. Where is the part of the marketing that they can put you? The part is difficult make music. For example, you talks about Tuscany before in Florence. One of my producer was in Florence, and maybe I traveled many times to Florence because of that to work on my album. I remember that. However, back to my first opinion, I think that is good also for you that you made many different things, and I think is the better way for an artist. To discover different part of yourself and also of your talent, to don't stay only just in the same maybe if you made only movie your life, you missing something that you know that you didn't because you made other things in your career.
Oh, I agree absolutely. I tell my students I took the what I call the slow path to fame. If you want to get famous quickly, do the same thing over and over and over again. But I saw my friend Bernie Wrightson, he did the Swamp Thing. And then suddenly the only thing people wanted to see from him or buy from him were drawings of Swamp Thing. And he got so tired of doing that. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm not as famous as Bernie, but I think my path is much smarter because I never get tired of what I'm doing because I'm doing something different all the time. It makes it very difficult for a fan to collect my work, but I'd rather take that path than the path of doing the same thing over and over.
Yes. How many time we have again for this conversation? When you need to go?
How much time would you like?
Oh, okay. No problem. Because I like this conversation. You work also for Disney. What is the experience for Disney?
Well, I worked for a lot of different parts of Disney. I put myself through art school painting watercolor portraits in New Orleans Square at Disneyland. I would do that during the summer. It was the way it would work is I'd have a piece of watercolor board and I would draw with a brown pencil the face and then paint it in with watercolors. And the cashier would advertise that each portrait took only 8 minutes. But I was determined to be the fastest portrait artist there because the more portraits you painted, the more money you made. You were paid by commission. So if I was racing, I could do an entire fully painted portrait in 3 minutes. So that was 2 summers there. Walt Disney Imagineering hired me to design additions to all their theme parks all over the world. I spent 2.5 years there, and then off and on, I worked for Disney, Universal, and Landmark Entertainment Group, designing theme park attractions. I like designing theme parks because it's like designing sets for movies, except they're not going to be torn down.
Okay. And back to the Master Universe again, because it's the main topic of this channel also for this, because this channel was born with because I have another channel, but it's basically a channel of wrestling. And I decided to create something for Master Universe collection that I had for my childhood. Mm-hmm. And many fans of this channel are Master of the Universe fans, especially for this movie. But there was some of the actor that wasn't happy about the way that you decide for the character.
I'm not sure. Could you ask that question again?
There is some actor of the Master of the Universe movie that didn't like the character that you created for them.
Oh no, actors are always happy to get work.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
for that movie, what is your favorite character that you created for the movie?
Oh,
Your
Sorod.
favorite?
I love Sorod. I think that it came out beautiful. The way the suit was constructed, the way that Westmore did the makeup. I think Sorod is fantastic. Plus the actor. You know, I've designed a lot of suit monsters for films, and I always say, do not hire a stuntman to wear the suit. Always hire an actor, because an actor will bring that suit to life. And that's the way it was with Pansmar and as Sorod. He moved in a very reptilian fashion. He was absolutely incredible. And in a film I did, Return of the Living Dead, there's a character named the Tarman. And Alan Troutman is the guy in the Tarman suit, and he brought that character to life. He could move as though his bones weren't connected. It's just spectacular. But that's the advice I give to other designers. Don't let a stuntman put the suit on. Get an actor.
Okay, and speaking of movie, because you remember me, I don't know why right now, the movie for the Hammer movie, like Dracula with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. What do you think about this type of horror movie that were so different, but also a little bit romantic, in my opinion? What do you think about the Hammer movie, horror movie?
Well, I own all of them, so that tells you I like them. I grew up with the Hammer films when I was a kid, in the '60s, and it was like watching the old Universal films, but in full color and with a lot more action. And Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, such great actors. Especially Peter Cushing, I'm a huge fan of his stuff. And there's a magazine called Little Shop of Horrors, which is devoted to Hammer films. And I've been contributing pictures for free to that magazine for I think the past 6 months. So if you get a subscription to that magazine, you're going to see a lot more of my work in there. I just did an illustration for The Vengeance of She and for Horror of Dracula, which was just called Dracula in the UK.
Yes, but maybe the first movie of Christopher Lee, Dracula. He made 2 movies with directed by Terence Fisher.
Yes.
Movie made. Yes, me too. I'm a big fan of that, also for the atmosphere, because there's once again, speaking of identity of a movie, they have an identity. The style of the Hammer movie is very recognizable, very easy to watch this movie, and you say this is an Hammer movie because the style is perfect for everything, for the location, actor, makeup, everything is in the same way, and therefore is a typical is something that you can understand immediately. This is an Hammer movie.
Yeah, well, especially with Bernard Robinson as the art director. Those Hammer films were fairly low budget films, but they never looked low budget because Bernard Robinson knew how to design sets and use colors and stuff that made those films look very lush, made them look much more expensive than they were. He was another one of my heroes.
Yes, and back to the Master of the Universe again. And when you go to because you told me before you was many times also on the set to watch the work in progress. And what is the moment in the set that you believe that you see a perfect way to create in real form your idea?
Well, when I designed the big set, it was the biggest set that had been seen in Hollywood for about 40 years. I took 2 sound stages and knocked out the wall in between them to build that gigantic set that's in the movie. And because the film business is such a small world, everybody in the movie business heard about that set, and they wanted. So I had film directors and movie stars and all kinds of people coming to see the set, and they all wanted to have their picture taken on the throne. So, but in the making of that set, a lot of it was going to be marble, except obviously we couldn't afford to have people carving marble. So we would take plywood and paint it to look like marble. And we went through a number of painters until we found the painters that we liked the best. And their work was absolutely extraordinary. They were painting the marble with mops, not brushes, but mops. And you had to get inches away to see that it wasn't real marble, that it was just painted plywood. The work was so skilled and so good in that. Extraordinary.
Wow. Yes, I think many things of that film, in my opinion, are very cool. The problem are this was an unlucky movie because what do you mean the canon? It was so sad for that because there's something unique because was a different way to go inside this mythology of Master of the Universe. It's a different way that like recreate like a new.
Uh-oh. You just cut out.
Can you hear me? Because maybe you are frozen again, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now.
I hope you will return, guys. Don't go away because William will return. We know that we live in different country. There we go. It's back.
Yeah.
But this time, however, I forget my question now because of this.
And I didn't hear it.
Okay. It's not. You never play a music instrument.
Oh yeah, I played the drums for about 12 years,
Oh.
and then I started playing the bass and a little bit of piano. I took piano lessons and I took guitar lessons, and so I play a lot of instruments very poorly.
But you had also when you play drums, you had also a music band.
Oh, I was in lots of bands. Quickest way to get a girlfriend, start a band.
Yes, but to me, for example, I understand the girl was more fascinating by a writer than a musician. I don't know why. Maybe in Italy, but when I become a writer, for example, on Facebook, I have an Italian page for myself as a writer, and maybe the 90% of my fans as a writer are women and girls, not men. I don't know why.
Wow, lucky you.
But right here on YouTube, because it's a channel of action figure and stuff like that, I have 90% of men. Is the other side of the moon. Because there's another concept, other things. But when you work on Conan the Barbarian, you never meet Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, I met him a lot. Yeah, I did 5 pictures with Arnold.
Oh, and what is Arnold? How is Arnold in those days?
Let me tell you about Arnold. One day, John Milius, our director, said, Arnold's going to be coming by today. He's been practicing his sword moves, and so we're going to watch him. So around noon, this guy came into the art department. It was Arnold. He was wearing red trunks and nothing else. And my first thought was, oh my God, that's the most beautiful human being I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, so he was there to show us his sword moves. So John Milius took us all outside. There was a little tiny park, and Arnold went through all his sword motions and stuff. Now, Arnold is really good at reading people, and he saw something in John Milius's eyes that he sensed a disturbance. And so he said, John, what's the wrong? There's a problem, right? And Milius says, no, there's no problem. And Arnold says, no, I can see you. There's something you don't like. What is it? He says, look, there's nothing you can do about it. He says, it's my body, right? And Milius looks at him like, what? He goes, yeah, my body. It's a bodybuilder body, and you want more of an athlete body, right? And Milius said, well, yeah, that'd be great, but and so if I trim here, and I trim here, and I trim here on my legs and legs, and Milius said, you can do that? 2 weeks later, Arnold had completely resculpted his entire body.
Wow.
And that's when I knew, when this man has a goal, nothing will stop him from achieving it.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
And you work in many movies. what is your favorite movie that you work in?
Probably Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay.
The
What is the
Latino.
story? The story about this movie, your work on this movie, Pan's Labyrinth?
Oh, how did I work on the movie?
Yes.
Oh, Guillermo del Toro and I have a lot of friends in common, and they kept saying, you got to meet Guillermo. You two are like two peas in a pod. You'll just love each other. Well, my friend Frank Darabont, who directed The Mist and Shawshank Redemption, he would come to Comic-Con in San Diego every year, and on Thursday night, he would throw a big banquet at the best restaurant in San Diego, and he would pay for everything. And he would, the people he would invite artists and film directors. And so one year, he invited me, and he invited Guillermo del Toro, and he had us sitting opposite each other. So for the whole dinner, Guillermo and I were having a fantastic conversation. And then the next day, Guillermo came by my booth, and he bought a couple of my pictures from me.
Oh.
And he said, would you mind delivering these to my home? I have a project I would like to talk to you about. I said, not a problem at all. So I drove over to his home and delivered the pictures. He gave me a tour of his spectacular collection. I mean, God, he's got so much stuff. It's unbelievable. In fact, he bought the house next door to him to house more of the collection. That's how much stuff he had. And he started to explain to me about Pan's Labyrinth and that he wanted me to work as a designer on the film. And in the middle of our conversation, he got a phone call. He said, excuse me, I need to take this call. And so I hear him talking, and he says, oh, thank you. Oh, that's so nice. That's very nice. That's a wonderful thing. I really appreciate that. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to turn you down. I need to make my little Spanish film now. And he hung up. I said, Guillermo, what was all that about? He says, oh, that was Warner Brothers. They just offered me Harry Potter. I'm like, whoa, my esteem for him just shot sky high. I thought, well, okay, this guy is a really serious artist. If he's willing to blow away the Harry Potter franchise to do his, what he calls his little Spanish film, man, I'm fully on board. This guy is amazing. And
cool.
He made one of the greatest films of his career.
Awesome. And you work also about another franchise that I like, the Muppets. The Wizard of Oz Muppets movie.
Yeah,
tell me something about this.
Sure, that was a wonderful script. A friend of mine, Kirk Thatcher, who's also a collector of my work. Gosh, I've known Kirk ever since he was almost a little kid. He used to come to see me at the Comic-Con in San Diego. Anyway, we kept looking for a chance to work together, and he knew I was a huge Wizard of Oz fan. And he got a chance to direct the Muppets Wizard of Oz, and he sent me the screenplay, and I love the script. I thought it should have been a feature film for theaters instead of a TV movie, but we tried to fight for that, but we didn't succeed. But I had a great time working on that. I also designed an entire Wizard of Oz theme park for Kansas too. I remember in the morning, I'm about to go to work. I was working for Gary Goddard, Landmark Entertainment Group. And I turned to my sons and I said, I don't think it gets better than this. They're paying me to draw Oz. This is just fantastic. I had such a good time on that.
Awesome. I love also the Muppets show. When I was a kid, I enjoyed so much the Muppets show because they are so fun, in my opinion, this idea, the Muppets show. However, in general, I'm a big fan of that. Maybe is a...
did you see Dark Crystal and Labyrinth?
Labyrinth, yes, with David Bowie.
Right.
Yes, you worked also on that movie.
So those were all done by but those are what Jim Henson called his serious Muppet movies. And his daughter, Lisa, was trying to convince her father to do a film on these two paleontologists who had a rivalry back in the late 1800s. And so he So he and his daughter took a vacation. They were in the Bahamas, and they were looking through dinosaur books to try to get ideas for this dinosaur movie that they wanted to make. And their cook came by and saw what they were doing, and she said to them, "Oh, you think these are dinosaur books? These aren't dinosaur books. I'll show you a dinosaur book." And she went back into the house. When she came out, she gave them my book. And they started looking through it, and they were very excited, especially when they got to the end and saw that I had already worked in film. So Lisa promised her dad that as soon as she got back to Los Angeles, she would call me up. And she did. And she proposed that Jim wanted to do this. It was going to be his third serious Muppet film, and it was going to be on dinosaurs. And so I wrote the screenplay, and Warner Brothers put up the money for the film, put up an extra $5 million just for research and creating dinosaur Muppets. And then about that time, it was discovered that Lucas and Spielberg were doing The Land Before Time, which was actually based on a children's book that I had created called The Little Blue Brontosaurus. And Jim Henson was lied to. He was told that their film would be finished before ours. It wouldn't have been, but Jim didn't want the public to think that he was copying Lucas and Spielberg, so he dropped the project. So several years later, I was working for Walt Disney Imagineering, and I was in the middle of a meeting, and Jim Henson was walking through the halls and spotted me. He pulled me out of the meeting. He said, "Bill, I've got great news. Our dinosaur project, our film, is back on board. I'll contact you later in the week, and I'm very excited. We're going to make that movie." And 2 days later, he died.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is so sad.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He was the real deal. He was really kind, very generous, special person.
Yes, I imagine the feelings for that is very sad also because he dies along with a huge, an awesome project along with him.
Yeah.
It's sad. Maybe to become a little bit happy, we have another question for a fan.
Okay.
Back to the Master of the Universe. Even though he was not in the movie dual budget, would you have liked to design Battle Cat? If so, how would you design him?
Well, I think it would be really fun to design Battle Cat. I would design him as a stop motion creature. So that's how I would have achieved it, because there was no CG back then. So we would have had to have done it by stop motion animation or with other forms of puppetry. I love drawing wild animals, especially the big cats. So that would have been really fun. And it would have been fun to do it in such a way so that it was changed slightly so that it wasn't just a copy of a big cat walking around the movie, but that it was something a little bit different about it. That would have been the challenge, I think.
And speaking of Master of the Universe again, the sister of Iman Shira was planned for the movie or not?
Oh, she was going to be in the film. In fact, I designed her costume, but she got cut out of the film. I don't know why they cut her out. I guess they felt that the story didn't need her.
Okay, and you create other character that never use it for the movie?
Oh, lots of them.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of them. I'm working on a book that'll be on all my film design, and in that book I will have all the work that I did for Masters of the Universe.
Awesome. And when will be published this movie, this book?
That's years away.
Oh, okay, because I'm looking forward, because it's cool seeing something like that, to imagine make some speculation about possibility for what the movie with this character instead of other one is cool. Understand behind the scene, because I think if you created also cool character like Sorat or like Karg, I imagine many other awesome characters like this that we haven't, because maybe script rules or something like that.
Yeah. Pick up the German magazine. That will have all those unused characters in it.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And speaking of the making of this movie, Master of the Universe, how many months was the shooting for that movie?
Oh man. Oh, I don't remember. I think it was at least a couple months. I know we went way over schedule. I never went over schedule on anything. I was always prepared, but the rest of the production was so screwed up. We lost a lot of time.
You was frozen during the way you described them.
Okay, so
During the time you was frozen because you says, "Oh my God, I don't remember," and you was frozen.
no, this time I remember. I don't remember how long we took to shoot. I think it was at least a couple months, which was incredibly long for a Canon film, and we ran over schedule. My art department never ran over schedule. We were the only department that was on time every day and on schedule. So that was, yeah, it was an exciting experience because the production was so screwed up. There was no way I could be late on anything.
Okay. And what do you think about Gary Goddard as a director?
I thought he did a fine job. I would have liked to have directed second unit. I saw some opportunities that were not taken that I thought could have been exploited. But I wasn't the director, so I would love to do another Masters movie with Gary as director. I think we'd just have a blast. It would be so much fun.
Cool. And what is your favorite book that you read in your life? The book that you never forget in your life that you read?
Oh, there's two: Moby Dick and The Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Those were two
I
books.
know.
Those were two books that I read that when I was getting towards the end, I did not want them to end. I wanted them to go forever.
And your favorite musician?
Favorite musician, Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix.
He died on my birthday.
You never meet Jimi Hendrix when you was young?
I saw him perform, but I never got to meet him.
Oh, however, you was lucky to saw him perform. Well,
Oh yeah.
because it's a dream come true. Also, watch him during the playing something. What do you think about Woody Allen?
I just watched that documentary on HBO, Allen versus Pharaoh. I'm not a huge Woody Allen fan, but I thought that documentary was a real hatchet job. I thought it was very unfair to him. My favorite Woody Allen movie is Broadway Danny Rose. I love that film. I think that's a great movie. But
I almost meet Woody Allen in Italy because at that time I worked in a TV show in Italy myself, and because of that I can go in the backstage of a concert because Woody Allen had also a jazz band, swing band,
yeah,
and he plays. And I wasn't in the backstage because I working on TV at that time. And I remember that experience because I tried to have pictures with Woody Allen, but it was difficult because everybody says that he was a strange people because when he arrives in the backstage, remember that his eyes were fixed in one point, and he goes he walk slowly and ignore everything and everybody outside him. It was impossible not talk with him, also have a connection with him because looks like a man, an alien a little bit. He's a strange guy, however, in real life. The only because I was in the backstage, I was so close with him at the time, but was looks like warning to don't talk with him, don't think because maybe it was I like some his movie because in his movie he talks about the problem, psychological problem of the people. It's also funny. I like other type of comedy. I'm a big fan of John Candy, Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, for this actor or whatever. I prefer that type of comedy than Woody Allen. Is a little bit cerebral. However, was something that he made was a good movie, in my opinion. Speaking of Woody Allen.
Yeah,
And also,
Dan Aykroyd introduced me to Robin Williams.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Robin Williams was
I'm
the sweetest, nicest guy. He was so kind, such a wonderful human being.
You are a friend with Dan Aykroyd.
No, I was working for the producer, and so the producer took me to Universal to see what they were doing, and we happened to run into Dan, and then Robin Williams walked over, and Dan introduced me to Robin.
Okay, because I'm a big fan of Dan Aykroyd, and I like him so much as an actor. Also his movie Ghostbusters, Blues Brother made some iconic movie.
Oh yeah, he's good.
And I believe also I believe, because I never meet him, that he's also a nice guy in real life, an humble guy. I believe. I don't know. Maybe we are this 2 hours and 25 minutes now.
Yeah.
Maybe if you need to go, no problem.
Well, we can start wrapping up. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Yes. No. There's no more question by the fan. Therefore, maybe I give you the last question. But if you want to come back in the future, you are very welcome. Because
thank you.
I think just one interview is not enough to go inside your career, because you made awesome stuff and many things. Maybe that today I forget to talk with you, because you have a big career with many interesting things.
Yeah, I'll send you my film list, because about half of it's not on IMDb.
Okay. Yes. There is because I saw a film list on your website, your movie that you worked. Maybe I forget something. It's possible, because you made many things, and maybe if you want to come back in the future, you're welcome to talk some other things. I believe there will be once again something about Master of the Universe, because many people like that, and also you are so popular also for my fan of this channel for Master of the Universe. However, the final question is, in your career you do many things, but what is if someone remember you for something, what is the things that you want that everybody remember you? William Stout is the perfect word to describe you.
Well, I hope people think of me as a kind person, as a generous person, as a person who loved to create, and a person who loved to put positivity in the world and create positive things to make people feel better, and to take away their troubles and their worries.
Awesome. I love it. And now I play the last moment with my piano to say goodbye to you and to everyone.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. To enjoy this stream with the one and the only William Stout. And don't forget to go to his website. And don't forget that in the future, maybe will be the chapter 2 with Alan and William Stout together, guys. Therefore, thanks for watching, guys. Thank you, William, to join the conversation. And thank you, guys. And so long, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ciao.